The chamber of the Galactic Council was designed to intimidate. A dome of crystalline alloy arched overhead, refracting the light of the pulsar into shifting ribbons of violet and gold. Tier upon tier of seats spiraled upward, each filled with envoys, admirals, and monarchs of species that had mastered the stars long before humanity even dreamed of flight. Their voices, hisses, clicks, rumbles, and harmonics beyond human hearing, wove into a dissonant chorus that pressed against the ears like static. Captain Elena Marlowe stood at the center of the amphitheater on the circular floor of polished obsidian. Alone. No aid, no companion, no crowd at her back. Just one flag, Earth's banner, displayed behind her, so small and fragile beneath the vaulted enormity of the chamber. Her throat felt dry, but her stance did not waver. She had been under fire before. Alien derision was easier to withstand than incoming artillery. She scanned the tiers until her eyes settled on the raised platform at the far side, where Chancellor Kha'tor reclined on a throne of living stone. The Chancellor's scales shimmered with oil-slick colors as he leaned forward. His jaws parted in a grin that revealed serrated teeth. His amplified voice rolled across the chamber. "Representatives of the Council, I present to you humanity's emissary. This," his claws gestured lazily toward her, "ape requests our protection." Amusing, is it not? Laughter rippled through the hall, rising like a tide. Some delegates clapped their claws or wings together. Others rattled their mandibles in mocking approval. The air grew thick with contempt. Elena let the storm wash over her. She had known it would come. Still, hearing it, feeling the weight of it, burned her like acid. She inhaled slowly, steadying her voice before it emerged. "Earth does not come begging." The laughter faltered, puzzled by the calm steel in her tone. Her words carried, amplified by the chamber's systems. She stepped forward into the central light. "We come warning you. The Kha'tor Swarm has broken the outer lines. Their probes have been sighted near Persis Fringe. Colonies burn. We cannot stand alone against them, but neither can you. They are coming." A wave of derisive muttering followed. Delegates leaned toward one another, whispering in scorn. On the upper tiers, a gelatinous envoy burbled something that made its neighbors shake with mirth. Chancellor Kha'tor tilted his head. His spine frill rose, the Zorti equivalent of a smirk. "How curious! A species that has barely tamed its own moon presumes to lecture the Council about threats it does not understand." Another wave of laughter thundered through the chamber. Elena clenched her fists but forced her voice steady. "We understand survival better than most. You dismiss us because our scars are fresh. Wars that broke our nations, storms that drowned our cities, plagues that scoured millions, still we endured. And when the swarm came, our outposts fought until the last breath. You call us primitive, but it is precisely that struggle which forged us." The chamber's noise dimmed slightly. A few of the minor envoys, species clustered in the shadow of greater empires, watched her with renewed interest. Kha'tor's eyes narrowed. "Struggle does not equal strength. You mistake desperation for valor. We, the Zorti Dominion, have crushed fleets older than your species' history. Do not pretend your planet of savages belongs among civilizations." His voice echoed, followed by approving roars from his allies. Elena stepped closer to the center. The floor sensors tracked her, ensuring her words remained magnified. She locked her gaze on Kha'tor. "You mock us because you fear what we represent. Not power, not empire, but the one thing you cannot imagine, that a wounded, scarred people could rise in defiance, not kneeling, not begging, but warning you. Humanity is the test you cannot pass. We endure what should break us." Her words rang sharp. Silence followed. It lasted only a moment before Kha'tor broke it with a low, rasping laugh that echoed like grinding stone. "Such passion! Such arrogance!" His frills spread wide. "Earth's plea is denied. Your world will stand alone. Perhaps then you will learn humility, if any survive to remember it." A gavel strike resounded through the chamber. The council seal flared above the Chancellor's dais, petition denied. The hall erupted once more in laughter and jeers. Delegates pointed and sneered, Some mimicked human gestures in crude caricature. The mockery enveloped her like a storm. Elena did not bow. She raised her chin, standing tall beneath the hostile galaxy. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her eyes stayed locked on Vacor's. "Remember this moment," she said, her voice cutting through the derision like a blade. "You laughed at Earth. But when the swarm comes for you, and you will remember who warned you. And then you will see what humanity does when we are no longer pleading." She turned and strode from the center, boots striking hard against the obsidian. The banner of Earth flickered behind her, lonely yet unbroken. The chamber's mockery followed her out, but not all voices joined in. In the upper tiers, a cluster of minor delegates exchanged looks heavy with calculation. And in the silence of their thoughts, a seed of doubt was planted. The corridors outside the council chamber were a labyrinth of crystalline arches and gravity wells, deliberately confusing to outsiders. Elena moved through them with clenched fists, the echo of alien laughter still stinging in her ears. The council's verdict had been swift, merciless, and unsurprising. Yet the sheer cruelty of it gnawed at her. She reached the chamber assigned to Earth's delegation, a bare enclave on the lowest tier of the station. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, like the ribs of some colossal beast. No aides waited. No colleagues. Earth had been granted only a single voice, a solitary seat. She dropped into the angular chair and let the silence press down. For a long moment she allowed herself to feel the weight of failure. Billions of lives on Earth depended on her words, and the council had laughed. The Kha'tor Swarm was coming, and she had nothing. No fleet promised, no treaty signed, not even a token gesture of acknowledgement. A soft tone at the door interrupted her thoughts. It slid open, revealing a figure she did not expect. Envoy Threx, representing the Kalari Compact, shuffled inside. His body resembled a bundle of translucent cords wrapped around a central core, faintly glowing with inner light. His species held no great fleet, no influence beyond their cluster of trade worlds. But his eyes, tiny black orbs recessed deep in folds of tissue, watched her with unusual intensity. "You stood against them," Threx said, his voice a resonant hum. "Few dare speak so boldly before the Chancellor." Elena arched a brow. "And fewer are heard." "True," Threx conceded. He eased into the seat opposite her. "But you did not bow. That matters more than you realize." She leaned forward, wary of hope. "Does it matter enough to act?" Threx hesitated, filaments coiling tighter around his frame. "My compact cannot oppose the Dominion. Our fleets are trade escorts at best. Yet others watched you today. Some among us know the swarm is real. We hear whispers from the frontier. We see colonies going silent." Her pulse quickened. "Then why do you remain silent here?" "Because silence is survival," Threx said simply. "We are small. To challenge the Council openly is to invite erasure." The honesty struck her harder than mockery had. She sat back, exhaling sharply. "Earth doesn't have the luxury of silence. If the swarm comes, we are their first meal." Threx inclined his head. "Perhaps. But your defiance, it plants questions." He rose, cords of his body rippling like water. "Do not think you stood alone today, Captain. Some of us are watching." With that, he departed, leaving only the faint shimmer of his glow. Later, Elena replayed the day's words in her head, pacing the cramped chamber. The Council's laughter, Vacor's sneer, Threx's warning, they merged into a storm she could not still. She moved to the viewport where the pulsar's violet light bathed the station. Beyond it stretched the abyss, vast and unblinking. Somewhere out there, the swarm was moving. Her reflection in the glass looked older than 34. Lines carved by war, eyes sharpened by loss. Memories rose unbidden, cities drowned under rising seas, skies blackened by ash, streets hollowed by famine. And then the wars, nations clawing for dwindling resources, leaving continents in ruins. Yet humanity endured. Always endured. She remembered the Battle of Ceres, the desperate defense of the first mining stations against the Kha'tor probes. A handful of human ships, underarmed and outdated, holding the line until they broke apart. She had been there, among the debris fields, commanding a frigate held together by duct tape and defiance. She had watched the swarm devour her comrades. That nightmare was coming again, on a scale the Council could not fathom. The door chimed once more. This time the visitor wore ceremonial armor of black metal interwoven with shimmering gold threads. Ambassador Kale, of the Serity Union. His kind resembled tall, willowy reptiles, movements fluid and precise. He entered without preamble. "You made enemies today," Kale said, voice low and smooth. "I wasn't aiming to make friends." He studied her, head cocked at a reptilian angle. "Good. Friends are easily discarded. Enemies must be respected." She crossed her arms. "What do you want, Ambassador?" "To understand you," he replied. "The Zorati laugh, but they also fear. They rule by spectacle. You broke the script. That is dangerous, for them and for you." Elena's gaze hardened. "I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to keep my people alive." Kale's tongue flicked in what might have been amusement. "Survival is politics. Remember that." He turned to leave, then paused. "Be cautious. The Council thrives on humiliation. They will test you further. If you endure, you may find allies in unexpected corners." When he left, the chamber felt colder. Elena sank into her chair again, her mind restless. Allies in unexpected corners. It was not nothing. The next session of the Council began with pageantry. Delegates filed in, banners unfurling, voices raised in ritual greetings. Elena stood once more at the floor's center, though the Council had not invited her to speak. She remained a symbol, a curiosity paraded for amusement. Chancellor Kha'tor wasted no time. "The humans insist upon recognition, yet bring no proof of this so-called swarm. Tell us, ape, are your warnings merely an attempt to claw resources from our coffers?" Elena's jaw tightened. "I bring testimony, records, debris from ships lost to the swarm. You refuse to examine them because you fear what they reveal." Laughter swelled again, but it was thinner now, some voices hesitant. Kha'tor leaned forward, spines flaring. "Fear? No. Pity, perhaps. You beg at our table, and we are generous enough to let you speak. But your time is ended. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Her temper flared, but she measured her words. "History has a way of embarrassing those who ignore it. Mock Earth if you wish. But when the stars darken with wings, remember this moment." The chamber rustled. The Chancellor raised his claw for silence. "Enough. Earth's plea is denied, and the matter is closed. Let the record show, humanity remains unaligned, unsupported, and irrelevant." The gavel struck again. Final. When the session adjourned, Elena walked the vast corridors under the weight of countless alien stares. Some looked on with derision, others with curiosity, a few with something sharper, calculation. She reached her quarters and stood once more before the viewport. The pulsar's light painted her features in harsh violet. She felt the sting of failure, but beneath it a harder edge. The Council thought Earth irrelevant. They thought humanity's scars proved weakness. They were wrong. Her voice whispered to the empty room, a vow as much as a prophecy. "We won't be ignored. Not for long." The days following Earth's humiliation passed in a haze of ceremony and spectacle. The Council thrived on appearances, grand debates, ritualized displays of superiority, endless speeches that meant little but reinforced hierarchy. Elena attended each session, silent, a token reminder of the species deemed unworthy of respect. Still, silence offered opportunity. She listened. She watched. And in whispers she began to hear what the Chancellor denied. Reports of lost ships circulated on the margins of conversation. Fragments of wreckage recovered in border sectors. Colonies that had ceased transmitting without explanation. Always dismissed publicly as piracy accidents or communications failure, yet always carrying a tremor beneath the denial. One evening, in a dim side hall where the vaulted ceiling swallowed sound, Elena intercepted a pair of delegates speaking in hushed tones. They did not notice her approach until her voice cut through the shadow. Which colonies are silent? The two aliens, scaled merchants from the Valath Compact, froze. Their luminous eyes blinked rapidly, skin shifting colors in agitation. You heard nothing, one stammered. Elena stepped closer, her gaze unyielding. I heard enough. Tell me. The second hissed softly, torn between fear and defiance. Finally, he leaned forward. 2 outposts near the rim. Entire stations gone. No distress call, no survivors. But if you value your world, forget this. The Council forbids discussion. They hurried away, leaving Elena in the echoing corridor, the weight of their words pressing into her chest. She no longer needed proof. She had lived the reality of the swarm. And now the silence of colonies confirmed it. They were moving closer. That night, she gathered what fragments she could. Reports from sympathetic envoys, censored data smuggled from outlying fleets, accounts from traders who swore they saw stars blotted out by shadow. She pieced them together in her chamber, spreading the evidence across glowing holopanels. The picture was incomplete, but the pattern undeniable. The Kha'tor Swarm was advancing. A soft chime at the door pulled her from her work. She frowned, expecting another envoy offering cautious sympathy. Instead, when the door slid aside, Kale of the Seriki Union stepped inside, his movements sharp, eyes glinting with calculation. You collect forbidden whispers, he observed. Elena crossed her arms. And you spy well? Why are you here? To see how far you'll push before the Chancellor breaks you, Kale replied. He circled the table, gaze sweeping over the fragments of evidence. Interesting. You may be reckless, but not a liar. The pattern forms. Her jaw tightened. You've known all along. Kale inclined his head. We suspected. But suspicion is not proof. To voice it openly is dangerous. Dangerous? Elena's voice sharpened. It's suicide to ignore it. He studied her for a long moment. Then, with a flick of his claw, he activated a data shard from his belt. A projection bloomed, images of shattered hulls drifting in space, claw marks scoring metal, a recording of inhuman screeches. This, Kale said softly, was taken from a patrol destroyed near the fringe. My union hides it from the Council to avoid panic. But you, his eyes narrowed, you would use it. Elena leaned closer, heart hammering. Show me everything. Kale deactivated the shard. Not yet. Trust is currency. You must prove you can spend it wisely. If you strike too early, the Dominion will silence you. If you strike too late, the swarm devours us all. Their eyes locked. Elena felt the gulf between them, a human scarred by survival, an alien steeped in careful games. Yet beneath it lay a shared recognition, the storm was real. I don't play games, she said. Then you will lose, Kale replied, and departed without further word. The next day, Elena sought Threx of the Kalari. She found him in a lesser forum, negotiating trade tariffs with insectoid delegates. He ended the discussion quickly when she appeared, ushering her to a quiet alcove. You've heard more, Threx said without preamble. I've seen enough to know the Council is blind. They'll mock us until the swarm claws at their doors. Threx's filaments trembled. And what will you do, human, when your warnings go unheeded? Her hands tightened around the edge of the table. I'll find those willing to listen. Small worlds, overlooked fleets, traders who know what silence in the dark means. We'll stand together, with or without the Council. He regarded her with something like sorrow. Coalitions built in shadow rarely survive the light. They don't need to survive forever, she answered. Only long enough to fight. Threx lowered his head, filaments dimming. You remind me of our founders before fear tempered us. Perhaps your recklessness will stir courage we've forgotten. For the first time, his words carried not caution but respect. That night, as she reviewed her growing collection of evidence, exhaustion weighed heavy. Yet her mind refused rest. She thought of Earth, oceans scarred by storms, cities rebuilt from ash, the countless dead who had forged the steel of survival and their descendants. Humanity had been mocked before, by nature, by its own brutality, and had endured. A sharp alarm broke her thoughts. The holopanels flickered with an incoming transmission, routed through hidden channels. Distorted, crackling with interference, a voice screamed across the void. "This is Outpost Meridian, Perseus Fringe, swarm sighted, hundreds, no, thousands." The message dissolved into static, punctuated by shrieks not born of any human throat. Elena froze. The evidence she had gathered was theory. This was reality. The swarm had struck openly. The transmission ended with a final, choked gasp. "Tell them, the humans were right." The council convened the following morning, oblivious to the message or deliberately ignoring it. Elena stood at her station, hands trembling with restrained fury. She wanted to broadcast the recording to every delegate, to force them to hear the terror in that dying voice. But Kale's warning lingered, too early, and she would be silenced. Too late, and no one would be left. As the Chancellor droned about trade disputes, Elena's mind burned with resolve. She could no longer wait for permission. The Council would not move until the swarm tore into their own borders. Humanity's fight would begin in the shadows, with whoever dared stand beside them. She glanced upward, scanning the tiers. Some delegates sneered as always. Yet others, Threx, Kale, a handful more, watched her with an intensity that hinted at more than mockery. She met their gaze, and for the first time since arriving, felt the spark of something greater than humiliation. Not recognition. Not yet. But the beginning of alliance. The swarm was coming. Earth would not face it alone. The alarm rippled through the Galactic Council station at dawn cycle, an ugly sound no envoy expected to hear within the sanctum. Delegates spilled into the chamber in a tide of panic and anger, voices overlapping in dozens of languages. Holograms blazed above the central floor, grainy footage from the Perseus Fringe, where flames consumed orbital docks and shadows swarmed across the void like a tide of locusts. The swarm had arrived. Chancellor Vacor's voice thundered over the chaos. "This is propaganda. Pirates emboldened by fear. There is no proof these creatures are what the human warned of." But doubt had cracked the chamber. Delegates shifted uneasily, recalling Elena's warning. Some cast furtive glances toward her as she strode forward, her boots striking the obsidian floor. "You call this propaganda?" she demanded. The projection behind her showed a frigate torn apart, its crew's screams echoing through the feed. "You can laugh at me, Chancellor, but tell that to the dead." A hush settled. Vacor's frill flared with irritation. "Even if true, the Council will deliberate. We cannot waste fleets on shadows." Elena's voice cut like a blade. "Deliberate while colonies burn? That is not governance, it is cowardice." Gasps rippled through the chamber. To call the Chancellor a coward was heresy. But the word hung there, undeniable, punctuated by the shriek of dying ships still echoing in the holofeed. Vacor raised a claw, ready to demand her removal. Yet before he could, another feed flickered to life, unauthorized. Someone had overridden the system. It was a live transmission, shaky, from a battered corvette. "Anyone, Council, do you hear? This is Meridian Defense. Swarm forces advancing, thousands strong. We cannot hold." Static shredded the signal, but not before the sound of chittering filled the chamber, primal and alien. Silence followed. The Council could no longer laugh. That silence gave Elena her opening. "If you wait for the Dominion's fleets to crawl into position, the swarm will already be on your doorsteps. But we don't have to wait. Humanity knows how to fight with what we have. Give us ships, give us whatever scrap you're too proud to use, and we'll meet them now." A murmur rose. Some scoffed, others whispered with uneasy interest. The Chancellor bared his teeth. "And if your reckless attack fails, ape? Then we waste precious resources for nothing." Elena met his gaze. "Then the humans die first. Consider it convenient for you." That stung. Even Vacor could not dismiss the utility of a disposable shield. He hesitated just long enough for Threx of the Kalari to rise, his glowing filaments trembling. "My compact will contribute escorts." Threx said, voice steady. Small, but better to fight than wait for silence. Another envoy stood, the insectivaran, their wings clicking. We will send drones. Limited but swift. One by one, voices joined. Minor powers, overlooked species, traitors with little but stubborn will. A coalition of scraps, perhaps, but scraps bound by desperation. Kha'tor spat. Fools throwing yourselves into fire! Yet he did not forbid it. Perhaps he wanted to see humanity burn, a lesson to the rest. Elena didn't care. A force, however small, was forming. Hours later, in a hangar bay reeking of ozone and engine grease, she stood before a ragged collection of ships. Old freighters retrofitted with weapons, Kalari escorts glowing faintly with bioluminescent cores, Varan drone carriers bristling with hives. And at the heart, Earth's lone warship, the Dauntless, scarred from series, hull patched in mismatched plating, its crew lean with hunger but eyes burning with determination. Her first officer, Commander Imani, greeted her at the ramp. We're undersupplied, underarmed, and outnumbered 100 to 1. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. Same as always then. On the bridge of the Dauntless, screens flickered with coalition signatures. 20 ships in all, a force laughable by Council standards. But to Elena, it was more than she had dared hope. Set course for Meridian, she ordered. We show the swarm humanity doesn't wait to die. The journey was short, the silence heavy. Every officer felt the weight of what awaited them. When they dropped from faster-than-light transit, the void exploded in fire. The Meridian system burned. Swarm vessels darkened the stars, organic leviathans with jagged carapaces and endless wings. They swarmed like predators, converging on every target with brutal precision. God, Imani whispered. There's thousands. Then we'll make them bleed for every inch, Elena said. Signal the fleet. All ships follow our lead. The coalition scattered, moving with chaotic unpredictability. Human freighters launched improvised warheads cobbled from mining charges. Kalari escorts darted between leviathans, lashing them with plasma bursts. Varan drones swarmed outward, kamikaze strikes crippling enemy wings. The Dauntless plunged into the heart of it. Hull alarms screamed as claws raked the armor, but Elena's voice remained steady. Target their joints. They move like hives, break one limb and the whole collapses. Cannons thundered. A leviathan split open, ichor spilling into the void. For every one destroyed, 10 surged forward, but the coalition's ferocity shattered their rhythm. Status of Meridian Station? Elena barked. Still standing for now, Imani replied. Then that's where we hold. They maneuvered into a defensive wall around the station, battered ships locking into position. Wave after wave slammed against them. The coalition burned, bled, cracked, but held. On the bridge, sweat streaked Elena's face. Every choice cut lives from her command, but retreat meant extinction. She glanced at the crew, their faces lit by fire and fear. This is what we are, she said quietly, more to herself than to them. Not beggars. Fighters. The words carried, steadying hands, sharpening eyes. The Dauntless roared as its main cannon fired, splitting another leviathan in half. Hours dragged into eternity. When the last wave broke, silence finally returned. The void was littered with carcasses, alien and allied alike. Half the coalition was gone. The Dauntless was bleeding atmosphere, its engines crippled. But Meridian lived. The surviving ships drifted in exhausted formation, lights flickering weakly. Elena stood at the viewport, staring at the wreckage. Her chest ached with grief for the lost, but beneath it pulsed fierce satisfaction. They had done what the Council would not, stood and fought. Transmit to the Council, she ordered, voice hoarse but unyielding. Tell them humanity held the line. Alone, if necessary. But not defeated. Imani gave a weary grin. They'll choke on it. Elena almost smiled. Good. Beyond the wreckage, stars glimmered. The swarm had been pushed back, for now. But she knew it was only the beginning. The Council could ignore her no longer. The survivors limped back from Meridian battered but alive. The council chamber awaited them with a cold silence. Elena stood once more in the obsidian circle, the scars of the Dauntless still fresh in her memory. Behind her, holos played of the battle, improvised freighters detonating, Kalari escorts burning bright, Varen drones tearing through wings of the swarm before vanishing in fire. Proof carved in sacrifice. Yet Chancellor Kha'tor remained unmoved. His scaled arms folded across his chest, voice smooth as venom. A skirmish. Nothing more. The swarm is savage, yes, but disorganized. The Dominion fleets will deal with them when required. Elena's blood surged hot, but she kept her tone level. If that was disorganized, Chancellor, I hope you pray you never see them in force. A ripple of uneasy murmurs spread across the tiers. Some delegates leaned forward, no longer sneering, their expressions shadowed with worry. Kha'tor's frill stiffened. Do not mistake the Council's patience for weakness. You humans gamble with scraps and call it victory. You cannot hope to stand against a full swarm. She took one step closer to the dais, her voice ringing sharp. Neither can you. Gasps echoed. The chamber held its breath. For a moment, it seemed the Chancellor would order her silenced, but instead he rose, towering above her, claws flexing. You presume much, Shape. I presume survival. Elena shot back. And I've seen enough to know that if humanity falls, you're next. The council dissolved into uproar. Delegates shouted across languages, voices clashing in fear and pride. Amid the storm, Envoy Threx's voice rose, steady and resonant. The human is right. My compact has already lost colonies in silence. We can no longer pretend the threat is distant. If the council will not act, then we must. His words emboldened others. The insected Varen clicked their wings in support. A cluster of minor delegates rose, demanding coordinated defense. The chamber trembled not with laughter, but division. Kha'tor slammed his claw on the dais. Silence! You would fracture the council over whispers and half-truths? The Dominion alone will decide when to act. Elena met his glare with calm steel. By then, it will be too late. The council adjourned in chaos. Outside, in the dim corridors, Elena found herself surrounded by the small coalition she had drawn from the margins. Threx, his glow muted but firm. Kale of the Sereti, his reptilian features unreadable. A half-dozen others whose names carried little weight but whose fleets, however meager, were now committed. Kale spoke first. The Chancellor will not tolerate you much longer. He sees your defiance as infection. He will strike at you before admitting weakness. Let him, Elena said. I don't need his permission to fight. You'll need more than defiance, Kale warned. The swarm moves faster than the Council imagines. Our scouts report entire sectors dark. Soon even the Dominion's fleets will be tested. Threx's filaments pulsed with grim resolve. Then we prepare. Together. Elena nodded. The coalition was fragile, but it was real. Small powers binding themselves out of desperation, not politics. Humanity had always fought with less and survived. This would be no different. Days later, the truce struck like thunder. A massive swarm fleet emerged in the Helix corridor, slicing through patrols with horrifying speed. Outposts went silent within hours. Refugees flooded calms with pleas that went unanswered. The Council could no longer dismiss it. Emergency session was called, the chamber filled with fear disguised as outrage. This is the storm you laughed at, Elena declared, standing again before the tiers. It has arrived. You can waste time debating who commands or you can fight. Delegates erupted, some demanding immediate mobilization, others insisting on further study. Voices clashed, fear tearing the chamber apart. Then the holos shifted to live feed, the swarm descending on Helix Prime, a core trade world. Its defenses collapsed in minutes. The council chamber fell silent, horror replacing pride. Elena's voice carried into that silence. You asked for proof. There it is. Mobilization began at last. But too slowly, too fractured. Great powers bickered over command, positioning fleets for prestige rather than survival. By the time their armadas moved, Helix burned. Elena's coalition, smaller but swifter, struck first. At the edges of the swarm advance, they fought delaying actions, harassing, ambushing, bleeding the enemy where massive fleets could not yet reach. Humanity's tactics, dirty, desperate, clever, spread among allies and used to fighting without overwhelming force. On the Dauntless, Elena directed strikes from a war table patched with static. Hit their joints, bleed them, retreat before they swallow us whole. Never meet them head-on. Her crews obeyed with grim determination. Freighters became bombers. Drones became suicide lances. Even Kalari trade escorts rammed Leviathans when their weapons failed. Every victory was bought with blood, but every victory bought time. Yet the pressure mounted. Losses climbed. The swarm seemed endless. And always, at the heart of it, Elena felt the weight of being outnumbered, outgunned, and unheard. The breaking point came at Draven's Reach. The coalition had gathered what remained of their strength, 20 ships against hundreds. Refugees clustered on the planet below, screaming for salvation. On the bridge of the Dauntless, alarms blared as the horizon filled with wings. Elena gripped the console, eyes burning. If we hold here, even for hours, the Council fleets can arrive. If we fail, the Reach dies. Commander Imani's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. Then we hold. The battle ignited. The void became fire and shadow. Human ships twisted through impossible maneuvers, drones tore into flesh, plasma lit the dark. One by one, coalition vessels fell, but not before taking Leviathans with them. The Dauntless buckled under the assault, hull groaning. Elena refused to retreat. We don't run. Not here. Not now. When the swarm threatened to overwhelm, a miracle arrived. Massive warships tore into the field, cannons blazing, the Dominion's fleets at last dragged into action by undeniable necessity. The tide shifted. Swarm vessels scattered under combined assault. For the first time, the galaxy's might struck in unison. After the battle, wreckage filled the Reach. Thousands dead, countless ships lost, but the planet stood. In the council chamber, no one laughed. Delegates sat in tense silence as Elena walked to the center once more, soot-stained uniform marking her as survivor. You mocked Earth, she said quietly, voice carrying in the stillness. But it was Earth's coalition that held the line until you arrived. Remember that. Kha'tor did not laugh this time. His frill lay flat, eyes narrowed. He did not speak, but the silence was admission enough. Humanity was no longer irrelevant. They had become unavoidable. The council chamber no longer rang with laughter. It echoed instead with silence thick enough to crush. Delegates sat rigid in their chairs, their banners draped like shrouds. The air was heavy with the weight of Helix Prime, Draven's Reach, Meridian, all names now etched in fire and blood. The swarm had been repelled, but not defeated. Entire sectors were ash. At the center, Captain Elena Marlowe stood alone again, the obsidian floor beneath her boots. Once she had been the subject of mockery. Now every gaze followed her. She carried no triumphant swagger, only the hard gravity of survival. Her uniform was scorched, edges frayed from battle. A faint scar traced her cheek, earned in the chaos at Draven's Reach. She wore it like a banner. Chancellor Kha'tor rose slowly from his throne. The arrogance remained in his bearing, but the edges had dulled. His frill no longer flared in pride, it hung close to his skull. When he spoke, his voice carried less venom, more weariness. Humanity fought, fiercely, he said. The words seemed to scald him. Your coalition delayed the swarm until Dominion fleets arrived. Without you, the Reach would have fallen. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some nodded in solemn acknowledgement. Others stared at Elena as if seeing her for the first time. She did not bow. You laughed at us. You denied us. And still we stood. Her voice was steady, each syllable deliberate. Understand this. Earth did not survive because you allowed it. We survived because we fought when you would not. Her words struck like blows. No delegate interrupted. Even the arrogant Sereti envoy Kha'tor kept silent, though his golden eyes glittered with something between respect and amusement. Kha'tor's claws tightened against the dais. You presume much, ape. Survival does not make you our equal. Elena stepped closer, lifting her chin. No, Chancellor. Survival makes us your reminder. Your fleets, your empires, your monuments, none of them matter if you lack the will to stand when the universe tries to break you. Humanity has been broken 1,000 times. We always rise. That is why you will remember us. The chamber shifted, as if the galaxy itself inhaled. For once, no one laughed. The session stretched into hours. Delegates argued over fleets, treaties, strategies. Yet the tone had changed. Where once humans were dismissed, now their defiance was invoked. Threx of the Kalari stood to demand more coalition support. The insective Varen insisted humanity be included in war councils. Even Kha'tor spoke, his voice calm but edged. They have already proven what the Dominion would not. Dismissing them now would be folly. Kha'tor attempted to regain control, but his dominance faltered. For every sneer he offered, another envoy countered with recognition of humanity's sacrifice. The council fractured, not in laughter, but in concession. When the vote concluded, the outcome was unprecedented. Earth was granted full council recognition, not as petitioner but as equal voice. Humanity, once mocked, now sat among the stars. That evening, Elena stood alone in her quarters, staring through the viewport. Beyond the station, the pulsar's violet light painted the void in shifting hues. Wreckage still drifted in her mind's eye, burning freighters, shattered drones, Kalari escorts reduced to embers. Recognition had come at a cost that weighed on her chest. The door chimed softly. Kha'tor entered without waiting for permission, his tall frame casting long shadows. You've done what few believed possible, he said. The council bends if not breaks. The Dominion will not forget this humiliation. Elena didn't turn from the stars. Good. Maybe they'll learn. Or sharpen their claws, Kha'tor countered. His tongue flicked in brief amusement. Still, you are no longer irrelevant. That alone reshapes the game. She finally faced him. I didn't come here to play a game. Kha'tor tilted his head. And yet you've won one. He inclined his head in what might have been a bow. For what it's worth, Captain Marlowe, my people respect strength. Today you showed it. When he left, the room felt larger, emptier. Elena let the silence wash over her. Strength meant little without resolve. And she knew the war was far from over. 2 cycles later, the council convened again, this time in a war council chamber rarely used. Vast holos displayed maps of the galaxy, red tides spreading where the swarm encroached. Fleets repositioned, alliances forged in fire. Elena sat at a table no human had ever touched before. She watched as the great powers bickered still, pride and suspicion thick in every word. But now, when she spoke, they listened. We can't fight this war as empires guarding borders, she said. We fight as one, or we fall one by one. Threx hummed agreement, filaments glowing. Varen wings clicked in approval. Even Kha'tor offered a nod. The Dominion remained silent, but no longer in control. The galaxy had shifted. Humanity had made it shift. Later, aboard the battered Dauntless, Elena walked the scarred corridors. Crew members moved with weary determination, their eyes marked by loss but sharpened by purpose. She stopped before the viewport at the prow, watching stars drift by. Imani joined her, leaning against the rail. Never thought I'd see it. Earth with a seat at the table. Elena's lips twitched, not quite a smile. Seats don't win wars. People do. Then we'll keep fighting, Imani said quietly. Elena nodded, gaze fixed on the endless dark. The swarm hasn't stopped. This was only their first taste. The council thinks we've won something. All we've bought is time. Her voice carried no despair, only certainty. Humanity had been dismissed, mocked, denied. Now they had been heard. But the war ahead would test not recognition, but endurance. She whispered, more vow than thought. Let them come. Humanity stood alone before. We'll stand again, this time, with the galaxy watching. The stars offered no answer, only their cold fire. But within the silence of the void, a truth burned. The Council was humbled, the galaxy had changed, and humanity would never again be ignored.